Senator Wyden has another question, and I believe you'll wrap up, and then I'll wrap up, and we'll be done, right?
You will be liberated soon, Mr. Greer.
Go ahead, Senator Wyden.
My question to you, and I'm going to get into one quick area and then make a short closing statement, deals with forced labor. And forced labor and doing everything we can to block it is, of course, the morally right thing to do, but it's also enormously important to American businesses and American workers. And in fact, we've on a bipartisan basis thought that was so important. USTR sits on the primary enforcement committee. It's called the U.S. Forced Labor Enforcement Committee. And I would like to know how you think we're going to be able to wage this fight, because USAID and the foreign players are having their roles reversed under what we have been talking about here in the last couple of weeks. So I'd like for your thoughts on what's going to be done to have an aggressive effort against forced labor, which I think is an important effort for the United States for the reasons I just mentioned.
So, Senator, I agree. I agree entirely with you on the forced labor issue, both morally and economically. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is tasked with enforcement, and I know that they've been escalating that in recent years. And I assume that direction is going to continue. It's not my agency, but it's an area where I'm very concerned, and I think I have equities there if I'm confirmed.
Why don't you get back to me in writing on this, because
Certainly.
You all do have an enforcement role. That's why I mentioned the organization. And so if you tell me it's somebody else, that concerns me, because I want to know how we're going to be able to push at least as hard as we do today, rather than go backward on forced labor. Here's my last thought. I still haven't heard from you over the course of the close to 3 hours, despite my repeated requests, a single good economic argument for these sweeping, universal tariffs. And in fact, some of my colleagues who haven't really had a chance to get into this over the years said, well, that's what we did under Trump 1. That is not what was done under Trump 1. In fact, Donald Trump said specifically he wanted to go way beyond what was done in his first term to these universal tariffs. So I want to leave you with this. I feel so strongly about trade being done right. I want to continue to discuss these issues with you. I'm not convinced we're there yet, because this is particularly critical to our competitiveness, to inflation, to what it's going to mean for working people and small businesses. And as I say, I consider this absolutely a prerequisite to doing trade right. And we have not gotten, in my view, a sufficient answer on the question of our time, which was the big change in policy from Trump 1 to Trump 2, because they're not, as my colleagues suggested, well, the same thing. They're not. This has much more extensive consequences, and I'll just close by way of saying I was supportive of the targeted tariff approach in Trump 1. And I think you might have been in my office with Bob Lighthizer when we talked about it, because then we said we're going to go in and really laser out an approach that ensures that we get the upside of a tariff without the anti-consumer downside. So I want to invite you to continue to work with me and my office to see if we can get through this and come to an agreement in terms of how it's going to be pursued at your office, because I think this is central. And I remember working with you in the past, and on a number of questions this morning, your views and mine coincide. But on this question of what's going to happen with a big universal tariff, this is brand new ground. I don't think it exists in history. It wasn't part of Trump 1, but it's got the potential to do a lot of damage to the American people and the American economy. You don't want that. I don't want that. Let's continue to talk about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.